You're about to step into a secret. The Kyūdō masters guarded with a kind of frightened devotion. A breathing ritual so precise, so unnervingly potent, that they believed revealing it to the untrained could create warriors who felt no fear, no hesitation, no tremor of doubt. This wasn't a technique. It was a controlled override of the human nervous system, a switch that let archers enter a state where the arrow didn't just fly toward the target, it felt summoned by it. And today, I'm giving that forbidden switch to you. Understand something before you go further. Accuracy was never about the bow, the years of practice, or the steadiness of your hands. Those are surface-level illusions. The masters knew the real truth. Accuracy is born in a deeper place, in the quiet machinery underneath your consciousness, shaped by the exact pattern of your breath in the last seconds before the shot. They hid this knowledge because it didn't just steady the archer, it dismantled fear itself. They believed if the wrong person learned it, they would gain an unnatural command over their emotions, the kind of control that blurs the line between discipline and danger. And they were right. Because the breath I'm about to reveal doesn't merely calm you, it conquers you. It reaches into the primal circuitry where panic begins and severs the wires before anxiety can rise. Once learned, it cannot be forgotten. Once used, the old version of you, the one trembling under pressure, cannot survive. You're standing at the threshold of knowledge designed not to comfort you, but to reshape you. And if you step forward, everything about the way you shoot, act, and react will change forever. Right now, even if you don't admit it out loud, your body is sabotaging you. In the exact moments when precision should rise, you feel the tightening in your chest, that invisible surge of pressure right before you act, the surge that makes your breath shallow, your pulse jump. Your hands betray you with tremors so small, yet so destructive. Your thoughts scatter, your focus fractures, and suddenly the target feels farther away, as if anxiety itself is pulling it out of reach. And here's the truth you've never been told. This isn't weakness. This isn't a lack of discipline. This is physiology hijacking you. When you face pressure, your sympathetic system attacks first. Heart rate spikes. Vagus nerve loses control. The prefrontal cortex dims, and your fine motor accuracy collapses. You cannot think your way out of this response, because thought is the first thing the body shuts down. But what should unsettle you is that the Kyūdō masters solved this problem centuries before neuroscience even had a vocabulary for it. They learned how to bypass the panic circuitry entirely, how to silence the internal alarm system before it could rise, using nothing but breath. They weren't calm because they were zen. They were calm because they rewired themselves. While you wrestle your biology, like a wild, unpredictable animal, they controlled theirs like a trained predator. Your anxiety persists, not because you lack skill, but because no one ever taught you how to command the machinery beneath your fear. And once you understand how to access the switch they used, once you feel your body respond instantly to a single breath, you'll realize the terrifying truth. Your limits were never real. They were programmed. And now, they're about to be erased. The Kyūdō masters were manipulating a biological mechanism long before modern science understood it. A mechanism so powerful, it can shift your entire nervous system in seconds. Breath, to them, wasn't air. It was a lever, a command, a silent signal that reached deep into the circuitry where fear, tremor, and hesitation are born. Today, we call that circuitry the vagus nerve, the master switch of your parasympathetic system, the system that shuts down anxiety at its root. When breath follows a specific rhythm, slow descent, micro-pause, controlled release. It sends an electrical pulse through that nerve, instantly lowering heart rate, stabilizing blood pressure through baroreceptor feedback, and pushing the brain into the razor-thin boundary between alpha and theta waves. That is the zone where awareness sharpens, noise fades, and the mind becomes frighteningly still. Imagine your anxiety as a storm, chaotic and violent. Kyūdō breathing doesn't soothe the storm. It steals its oxygen. The controlled exhale increases vagal tone, calming tremors in the hands, smoothing motor output, sharpening prefrontal control. And here's the part that makes this ritual dangerous. It doesn't use passive relaxation. It uses pressure. It hijacks the same pathways your body uses during fear, but flips them, turning the physiological chaos of anxiety into mechanical precision. The masters understood that breath could operate like a blade. Too soft, and nothing changes. Too hard, and the system collapses. But applied with exact tension, it cuts straight through fear. This is why their technique was protected. Because once you feel how quickly your biology obeys this pattern, how fast panic can be silenced, you start to understand a truth most people never face. Fear was never the enemy. The lack of control over your internal machinery was, and now that machinery is about to become yours. Before the bow ever rises, the Kyūdō master has already taken control of the battlefield inside his body. Phase 1 is not about looking calm. It's about constructing an internal structure so stable that anxiety has nowhere to live. Most people think preparation is external, feet, posture, shoulders. But the ancients knew the truth. If the internal frame is unstable, the outer form is an empty shell. So you begin with grounding, but not the crude idea of standing firm. You drop your weight into the floor as if sinking through it, letting the hips widen just enough for the pelvis to unlock. This single adjustment frees the diaphragm, giving it the ability to descend fully. A collapsed diaphragm is the death of accuracy. A lowered diaphragm is its birthplace. Then you anchor your awareness into the tendon, the point just below the navel the masters treated as the true center of control. Modern physiology now knows why. Activating deep abdominal musculature sends a message of safety through the vagus nerve, lowering heart rate by a few quiet beats. Anxiety loses its foothold before it has a chance to rise. And now comes the smallest, most forbidden detail, the tongue. Pressing the tip gently to the roof of the mouth stabilizes the throat, preventing microconstrictions during the inhale that would otherwise create pressure spikes and trigger subtle sympathetic activation. This tiny gesture rewrites your internal acoustics. Your breath becomes clean, unobstructed, silent. When you inhale, you do not pull air upward. You let it fall downward, imagining it pooling at the tendon. This reprograms the diaphragm to move like a weight rather than a balloon, signaling the body that it is safe, steady, dominant. And then, just before moving into phase 2, you create a microscopic expansion around the lower ribs. Not visible, not dramatic, just enough to generate internal tension. You are not relaxing. You are shaping yourself into a vessel of controlled pressure, a body capable of holding stillness the way a bow holds force. By the time your hands even think about touching the bowstring, the chaos inside you has already been tamed. Now you enter the phase that transforms mere archery into a neurological art. The moment where breath and movement merge into a single command that overrides your fear circuitry. As you begin to raise the bow, you do not allow your inhale to rise with your arms. That mistake alone triggers the sympathetic surge, the spike that makes hands tremble and thoughts break apart. Instead, you maintain the illusion of a downward breath, even as your body ascends, forcing the diaphragm to stay low and signaling the vagus nerve that there is no threat. This is the foundation of silent tension breathing, the technique the masters guarded because it grants a level of control that borders on the unnatural. You inhale only to about 60% capacity, not more. A fuller breath would destabilize the shoulder girdle, distort the scapular glide, and create internal pressure that magnifies tremors. But at 60%, the torso becomes quietly firm, stable, obedient. When you reach that point, you perform the micropause, a suspension so brief it barely exists, yet so critical it anchors the entire shot. This pause stiffens the intercostals and locks the rib cage into a state of controlled tension, allowing you to draw without emotional leakage. At the same time, internally, you narrow the breath into a single imagined line, running from the tendon, through the spine, and up into the skull. This mental image is not poetic. It aligns proprioceptive and motor pathways, reducing noise in the nervous system and smoothing the draw into something almost mechanical. As the bow reaches full extension, you initiate the most delicate part of the ritual, the micro exhale. It is tiny, invisible, nearly inaudible, yet its effect is immediate. Heart rate drops by a beat or two. Finger tremors fade. The nervous system shifts into precision mode. You are holding tension, but the breath is not trapped. It is threaded through the body like a quiet, stabilizing force. In this moment, you become the paradox the masters lived by, a body stretched to its limit, containing a mind that is utterly still. The shot is not released yet, but its path has already been written. Here you reach the moment the Kyūdō masters feared to reveal too openly, the instant where a human being stops shooting an arrow and starts commanding the nervous system with the precision of a blade. When the bow is fully drawn, and every fiber of your body is suspended between tension and intention, the release does not begin in your fingers. It begins in your breath. More specifically, in the exhale you were never meant to use outside a battlefield. The controlled, weaponized release the masters called the hidden death exhale. Not because it harms others, but because it kills the last flicker of hesitation inside you. About half a second before release, 0.4 to 0.7 seconds, you begin the descent. The exhale is not forceful, not soft. It is a thin, controlled stream slipping through a relaxed throat. A faint hiss, almost imagined, activates a vagal reflex that instantly suppresses sympathetic arousal. In other words, the body stops being afraid. Heart rate drops. Microtremors in the fingers fade. The brain shifts into a narrowed state of clarity, where instinct and calculation merge. In this slender window of neurological silence, your fingers release the string, not by choice, but by inevitability. Ancient texts described this as the arrow freeing itself. Modern neuroscience would call it the collapse of the motor hesitation loop, triggered by a parasympathetic surge that overrides conscious interference. The shot becomes pure action, stripped of doubt. But the forbidden exhale doesn't end with release. It continues past the moment the string snaps forward, extending through your body like an aftershock. This continuation stabilizes the torso and prevents the collapse response that ruins accuracy. Most archers fire and fall inward. A Kyūdō archer breathes through the shot, maintaining structural integrity even after the arrow leaves the bow. You do not chase the arrow. You breathe it into existence. In this moment, the master said, the boundary between archer and target dissolves. Modern physiology might call it heightened sensory-motor coherence, yet labels don't matter. What matters is the transformation. In the space of a single, forbidden breath, anxiety ceases to exist. You have stepped outside it, into a realm where fear has no authority. Once you feel this moment, once you feel the release born not of force but of silence, you will never return to the old way again. When you commit to this ritual, your transformation won't be metaphorical or emotional. It will be physiological, measurable, and impossible to ignore. The Kyūdō masters didn't just create a technique. They engineered a sequence that rewrites your nervous system layer by layer. And you will feel those layers shifting from the very first day. On day 1, the change is subtle but undeniable. The tremors lessen. Not because you became calmer, but because your vagus nerve finally received a steady, coherent input. Your diaphragm begins to move with weight instead of panic. Breathing slows without effort. Your awareness sharpens, not into tension, but into clarity. That tiny sliver of space between impulse and action widens. And for the first time, your mind stops sprinting ahead of you. By day 3, the shift becomes harder to dismiss. Your baseline heart rate dips. Your body recovers faster from spikes of stress. You notice that moments which once triggered anxiety now feel distant, like echoes instead of threats. Your hands respond with steadiness you didn't earn through practice. They respond because the internal noise that once disrupted your motor precision is finally quieting. Scientists would call this improved vagal tone. The masters simply called it the stillness waking. By day 7, you cross the first threshold. Silent tension. Breathing stops feeling like a technique and starts feeling like your default wiring. The diaphragm settles instantly. The micro-exhale emerges automatically. Your nervous system adapts so quickly that accuracy improves even if your form hasn't. Fear tries to surface, but it cannot take shape. It dissolves before it reaches awareness. This is the stage where archers, throughout history, described feeling as if the bow, the breath, and the body were a single system, rather than separate pieces. And then, day 14 arrives, and everything deepens. Your breath drops you into the alpha-theta border effortlessly. Releases become smoother, cleaner, frighteningly consistent. You stop trying to be accurate. Accuracy becomes the natural consequence of your internal state. The world feels slower, but not because time changed. Your nervous system did. You begin to taste what ancient writings called mushin, the absence of the anxious self that interrupts skill. This is not mysticism. It is neuroplasticity, baroreceptor training, and parasympathetic dominance becoming your new baseline. You are no longer reacting to stress. You are shaping it. And once you feel this level of control, once your biology bends to the breathing pattern you've carved into it, the old version of you, the one that shook, doubted, scattered, becomes unrecognizable. You haven't just changed your shooting. You've changed the machinery of your mind, technique, or a philosophy, or some poetic idea about calmness. You've been handed a ritual that entire lineages of Kyūdō masters protected with a kind of sacred fear, a breathing sequence so potent it can dismantle anxiety before it even forms and replace it with a precision the untrained would consider unnatural. And now, it rests in your hands. But power like this doesn't bend for the curious or the casual. It demands proof. It demands commitment. It demands that you step out of the version of yourself that trembles under pressure and into the version capable of shaping your own physiology. 7 days. That is the price. 7 days of breathing with intention instead of instinct. 7 days of dominating your internal machinery rather than being dragged around by it. 7 days of using the forbidden exhale in the exact moments where fear once owned you. If you take this challenge seriously, the shift will feel almost dangerous. The hesitation that used to choke you will vanish. The pressure that once destabilized you will lose its teeth. Your accuracy will stabilize not because you practiced more, but because the nervous system you're operating with is no longer the same. And yet, this is also where the real risk lies. Once you taste this power, once you feel your mind quiet on command, once you feel fear collapse before it can rise, you will not want to return to who you were. That old self will feel hollow, flimsy, unreal. So here is the line drawn clearly in front of you. Continue as you are, owned by the reflexes you never chose. Or take the 7-day challenge and claim the control the masters guarded for centuries. Prove to yourself that you're not afraid of the stillness waiting inside you. Prove you can handle the discipline that reshapes your biology from the inside out. Start today. Start now. And when your breath becomes the switch that governs your accuracy, your calm, your power, then you'll understand why this ritual was hidden. And you'll understand why it belongs to you now.